hear crows.
And I hear typing.
It's Black Friday. I don't know what that means. My name is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. It's the day after Thanksgiving, and I'm thinking of Christmas stuff, so I think I'm just going to get on with it. Welcome to, in the center square, Robert Scoble.
What's up? I am so stuffed.
Yeah?
It's gonna be a hard one to get through. But I do have some new toys.
What is this purple light behind? Oh, thanks.
See, I can make it red. I have a home automation system from Revolve and these new Philips Hue lights, which I can make different colors. The crows are a great addition to
it's an effect. It's part of the new TriCaster setup. We're not using the TriCaster, just the crows.
Just the crows.
You're not using the new TriCaster yet?
Are you kidding? The manual is 700 pages long.
Well, if you don't start using it, you won't figure it out.
Well, I know that, but we're attempting to be able to absorb this incredible innovation.
It took Rocky a couple months to get really efficient with his.
Yeah, well, we're not looking for efficient, so that'll be okay. We're just looking for staying on the air. The Crow Man is Kevin Marks. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey there, nice to see you.
Nice to see
I
you.
seem to have a dog in the park as well, so clearly it's going to be a animal-filled show today.
And speaking of animals, from the other Great Isles of Britain, what is it? UK. When did it become UK and stop being England?
You know, there's a long-standing discussion about this, but here's the easy way to remember it. England is England, Scotland is Scotland, Wales is Wales, and Ireland is Ireland. Great Britain is Scotland, Wales, and England. The United Kingdom includes Northern Ireland.
Okay, well,
that did not clear anything up for me.
Kevin Marks can unravel this in the chat room. So, Robert Scoble, what's going on?
A whole lot of turkey eating.
Yeah, but I mean, in the world of technology or politics.
I don't know. Revolve was here last Friday after the show and set up my house with this new home automation system, and they just got funded this week. So I guess that's happening, but everything else seems to be about Black Friday. Go out and buy. Me, I'm ignoring this shopping malls.
Well, going through the New York Times for the last week, I've been completely devoid of anything except Twitter for a couple of weeks because of Dreamforce. But I went through the New York Times technology section this morning, and there's a lot of stuff happening with mobile apps, like for parking. Did anybody see that story?
No.
I'm not sure where it is. They have some 27,000 or 2,700 parking lots, and basically you can find out what the chances are on Black Friday of being able to get a parking space before you decide to go down to the store. And so you look for 90%, filled, and if you see that, then you start driving. It's an interesting scenario. You can start to pay for parking online. You can start to add more time online. It's going to have a big impact on city budgets when they don't have tickets to be able to hand out. So that's going to be a change.
It'd be interesting to have like some parking lots that are outside the city center, because if you go to San Francisco, for instance, and I think New York is just about as expensive. It costs you up to $50 a day to park, depending on the neighborhood you're in and what hotel you go to. But I'm regularly paying $25 a day to park, and you could probably park somewhere else and take an Uber in, and that would be a lot better. Certainly to get to some of the Italian district or the waterfront, you're going to have to take an Uber anyway. So. It'd be interesting to see if they could hook up with parking garages that are usually less full and drive you in.
Did you see the Uber decision? That's really interesting to me. Travis Kalanick has decided that Uber does not want to become the owner of cars, but they do need more cars. So they've cut a deal with Toyota and then one other car manufacturer to do really great financing on cars for drivers. And basically, they're trying to encourage people to buy fleets of cars and become the Uber fleet for their city, which occurs to me is probably a pretty decent business.
Yeah.
Well, in general, these apps that are transforming industries seem to have one thing in common, which is they achieve critical mass extremely rapidly these days. I mean, that was your experience with Just.me, right?
We got to, about 100,000 users in a couple of days, but then it spikes and then it becomes pretty linear after that. And it only explodes if you reach takeoff. You get to kind of crazy growth, and very few apps do that.
Yeah, so I'm just talking about in general the rate of onboarding of apps has accelerated, and then that second, much larger spike, of course. I was driving my daughter to a friend's house in the East Bay last night, and I was thinking about some various things, and just before we got there, I asked her to please take her headphones out of her ears so that I could have a moment of communication. Once every week or so. It's very exciting. And I asked her, why do you use, what's the name of the Snapchat? Why do you use Snapchat? What is it about it that you find special? And she gave me an answer. And then when I tried to sort of ask her anything more about it, she gave me the real payload, which was, I've already told you what I think about it. And then she put her earphones back in. So there's this.
You should check out. So a lot's happened with, not to talk about Just on Me, but a lot's happened. The first thing is I bought it back.
Congratulations.
So I am now the sole owner of Just on Me. And we launched a new feature last week called Confessions, Punishments, or Forgiveness. And basically people are confessing to stuff, and you can either punish them, in which case you can say what the punishment is, or you forgive them. It's all teens, as far as I can tell, through to early 20s, and a lot of women. And it is completely full of their personal lives in public. It's kind of stunning to me to what extent, especially girls, are prepared to talk about private stuff in public. The confessions are anonymous, so that makes it easier, but the punishments are not. They know who punished them, so their friends can come in and punish them and stuff. And it's completely taken off. It's huge.
It sounds kind of kinky. Is this a Catholic thing or what?
It is kind of kinky. Obviously, it has a source in Catholicism, but it has a source in Judaism as well. They have the Day of Atonement. But it's kind of like Whisper, but with engagement. Whisper, you just say stuff, and it kind of gets boring after a while. But because there's punishments, it's kind of interesting.
There was an interesting swarm on Twitter yesterday, I believe it was, and I saw somebody put a Storify app together based on it between Mark Benioff and a number of analysts, tech analysts, regarding the Salesforce One rollout. And it was fascinating to see how quickly this is spinning itself up. These kinds of, this is the stuff that we used to do with Twitter back at the beginning with Track, which was to basically signal somebody and then engage in a rapid fire conversation to the howls of complaint on the part of people who were following you because you were going to tell them what you had for breakfast, and instead got these completely obscure references without at mentions or anything. It was the wild west in those days. But now we've got this really concise and extremely valuable conversation that's going on node to node between Mark Benioff and Esteban Kolsky and other analysts. It's real work is getting done here, whether people realize it or not. And how companies react to things. The whole concept of how social media has evolved into being a business tool has really started to have this incredible real-time component.
Well, the big question there, Steve, and I hear this question a lot, and I would love to come up with the answer to it, is what kills Exchange Server or its equivalent in the enterprise? Because that's basically asynchronous email-based threads, and you've got all this real-time stream stuff like Chatter, but somehow there needs to be something that is neither of those two is missing. It's kind of the mobile enterprise version of Exchange Server that integrates calendar, people, messaging, both synchronous and asynchronous, with a memory and the ability to manage processes.
Kevin?
Needs to be one monolithic thing, and can't we boot it out of pieces?
I'm sorry, you cut off.
When I look at those things,
you cut off.
The challenge we've had is that there has been a breakdown of intercommunication between the companies. That we've now got like Facebook and Google and Twitter and Apple and Microsoft sort of fencing off stuff rather than trying to interoperate, and that's problematic.
But that always happens. I mean,
well, it goes back and forth. I mean, we have phases of cooperation, phases of trying to be the one monolith.
Well, I think that I mean, you and I disagree about this rather consistently over the years. I applaud your desire to create an open standards environment where this kind of friction is reduced. But I think that fundamentally the things that actually end up working are the tools. I mean, I think Snapchat is a perfect example of how they achieve some velocity over this teenage thing, and whether people continue to see this as only something that the kids do, or it breaks out into maybe the area that Pinterest is involved in right now. Direct messaging of products, transactions, etc., is a question. But the velocity of expansion of these kinds of services is directly proportional to the sort of Maslow's needs that are being met. Yeah.
Did you guys notice that?
You're really you've got some audio issues here,
Okay.
Keith.
Steve, your audio is going down, so it's getting louder and going down for me. I don't know why.
Getting louder and going down. What do you mean by that?
Right now you're very quiet. I cannot barely hear you.
How's that?
It's a little bit better.
Is that better for me now?
It's a little.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You were saying something?
I was saying, did you notice there was a story about this company called My Diary in either the New York Times somewhere, and the gist of the story was that more and more messaging is going private, and it's funny because I'm witnessing more and more messaging going public, and I think probably both are true. That people are beginning to think about what tools they use for what purpose, and dividing their time between them. I see it with my older kid between Instagram and Snapchat and Just Me. They don't use it for the same things or with the same people.
Robert?
Yeah, I agree with that. We talked at Thanksgiving dinner a little bit about it. People are wanting to have certain things be impermanent, and that's why Snapchat is there. Some things you just don't want to stick around, and you don't want to think about the consequences 15 years from now when somebody pulls up your conversation with somebody, right?
Yeah, I see the impermanence of it as being the initial attractor. I don't see that as being what is the value of the service. I mean, that's kids start to. I don't know why I'm getting echo here too.
I'm getting echo as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to cut this one short if this continues.
Anyways,
go ahead.
I don't know that I agree with that, because the brand promise of Snapchat is impermanence. And if they ever try to do something that screws with that brand promise, they're going to hear a lot of pushback from their users.
I don't
Now,
go ahead.
can they split off and start a new brand that's a public brand? I think so, but they're going to have a separate brand and a separate UI to make sure that people really understand that this is impermanent and this is permanent. And if they do it right, maybe they can spread out into other things. But I'd be very, very careful. Somebody was asking me about advertising in Snapchat. I'd also be very careful about the advertising, because if you turn advertising inside Snapchat too contextual, in other words, if you're studying the messages or hooking up to Facebook and looking at stuff and trying to really do demographic and content filtering on the advertising, people are going to figure that out and go, wait a second, I thought you weren't studying these messages. These are impermanent messages that I don't want you to study. This is not even as, Gmail has that, argument against it. And most people are okay with it because they see the ads and they understand there's some advertising there from the beginning. Snapchat is a completely different animal, and it has a completely different brand promise to its users.
Yeah, but that's that spectrum of, I think of it as three very distinct messaging areas. One is shared with friends, where friends can be one or more. The second is public, where it's really out there, it's anyone. And Twitter kind of dominates that area and does a little bit of friend stuff through direct messaging. Facebook is pretty much more public as well these days, although it didn't start that way. Snapchat's completely private, and it's trying through stories. It's got this.
It's different than just private, Keith. It's impermanent. And the impermanence is what the teenagers mention, because they know they can be private in Facebook and Twitter. But there's a permanence to that, which really screws with their mind, and they don't want permanent stuff sticking around. They want to treat the world like a phone call, where after you have a phone call, there's no recording of that phone call, right?
I agree with that, but I also think impermanence can be a feature of any conversation, whether public, shared, or even private, if you want it to be. And probably
it can be, but I go back to the brand promise of these things.
Keith, put your headphones on, please.
These social systems now are so complex. If you sit with a user that just joins Facebook, like I did a couple weeks ago, these things are really complex for a new user. And they don't know how to figure out what is impermanent and what is permanent and what's private and what's public. They really are struggling with learning the tool. I know it at a deep level, so telling me I can make a message impermanent would be sort of cool. But the brand promise of Facebook was not that at all. And on Snapchat, that's the whole reason you use Snapchat, is the impermanence. So if they ever screw with the impermanence, and they do it in an improper way, you're going to see a huge amount of pushback from their user that Facebook simply wouldn't have.
I think that's probably true. Although I must say, until the last week, I thought that young people were flocking towards ephemeral. And my experience with Just Me in the last week has completely changed my mind. I'm absolutely stunned what people are putting in public permanently. It blows my mind that people want to do that, and it's kind of very honest and but disarmingly honest.
Like what you're talking about, stuff that has a taboo for us, like maybe their drug use or
it's drug use. It's actually body parts. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's everything and anything. And
I don't really think that this is an issue of public versus private. For example, Snapchat is not private. One of the things that my daughter told me is that it's really easy to be able to bring numbers of people in at the same time. So it's a kind of quasi-private. I agree with Robert's comments about the brand promise, but I also think that when they expand upon the brand promise, as they accelerate with other capabilities that tend to create an environment in which these people can continue to communicate. I asked her about what was going on with texting, and doesn't she use texting? And she said yes. she does, but that it's somehow she wasn't very verbal about this, but she just felt that Snapchat was a better way of communicating quickly. The real-time aspect of it seemed really important to her, even though texting is essentially the same kind of speed.
Well,
it gives you a kind of read receipt thing as well, doesn't it? Snapchat, so you can tell when they've seen it.
That's actually that's why I like,
which you can see in Facebook and Google Chat as well now. But there is that sense of they've seen that, they haven't seen that, which is not there with SMS. With SMS, it's a bit of a black hole still.
Yeah.
And they also
that's why I like Facebook, Facebook's messaging for talking to my friends. Mo is saying that if it wasn't for Instagram, Facebook wouldn't be relevant right now. I totally disagree with that. And anybody who looks at the usage numbers and the traffic numbers off of Facebook realizes how deep people are addicted to Facebook at a far deeper way than even Twitter, than there are to Twitter. Now if we're talking about kids, kids are moving their behaviors around to do a whole bunch of things. One, to be impermanent, to get away from parents, to be in a system that doesn't have a lot of adults, because that is cooler. I mean,
and they do have this odd thing of growing up.
Yeah, when they get to college, they change their behavior because all of a sudden it's not about talking to boys and their girlfriends. It's about talking to employers. And if you're going to talk to employers, now all of a sudden you have to have a LinkedIn page, you have to have a Facebook thing, you better have a blog if you really want to build a brand that people attract to. I'm seeing this when people are begging me for jobs. They always are linking to their LinkedIn and Facebook and blog. Very rarely are they talking about Instagram or Snapchat.
But that means you've got to manage what's public and what isn't, if you want to do that, because if you want to use your profiles for your reputation, then you have to go to ephemeral or private messaging systems for stuff you don't want to get out there.
And I think that's why Snapchat is so popular with the high school kids. When my 19-year-old was in high school, he did not want to build a public persona too much. He didn't even know what to write. He didn't know who he was. So how are you going to write a blog when you don't even know what you're going to be passionate about in life and what you're going to be doing 5 years from now after you go to college? He's just figuring that out in college.
But what's interesting, Robert, is why was there space for Snapchat in a world that already had WhatsApp and those kind of apps? Because Snapchat was image centric and WhatsApp is text centric? Because WhatsApp already does, minus the ephemeralness, but it's totally private. WhatsApp, it already does a lot of what you get with Snapchat.
I wasn't there at the beginning, and so a lot of the popularity of these things depends on the first 100,000 users and how the network spread them. But I think you're onto something with the images. People are used to an Instagram world where they share their lives visually, and they want something that has a first level sharing experience of pictures. I mean, you watch how kids work at concerts, and they're always taking selfies and taking pictures of their experience and passing it around.
And it's not just kids anymore.
I do it too. But
parents are starting to do it.
But the kids are at a different level.
Mo Glitz in the chat room says, first Instagram, next Snapchat. That's exactly right. These are replacements for kids who have graduated, I think, from Facebook, and are starting to try and find their own domain. And they look to Twitter, and some of them are actually using Twitter, but most of them didn't like it, and they went to Instagram. From Instagram, they kind of hit a wall in terms of this real-time, private communications, and now they're going.
Well, I think Instagram, the first thing kids learn is the social consequences in high school of doing things. My son was not really bullied, but his girlfriend stole his guy friend's phone and started texting with him. So people learn about the social consequences of what you do with other people online, and they learn it very quickly and very deeply. And so they learn, okay, Facebook is for talking to my parents now, and Snapchat is for doing this quick, kind of, hey, here's something funny, kind of thing that they don't want to stick around. If you're taking a picture of you, body parts is a good example. I would, if I was a kid, I wouldn't want that sticking around because I don't know what the consequences are on my life, 5 years from now after I get out of college and need a job.
Well, these texts stick around too, and in fact, they've been walled off. Apple can't find them once they're not allowed to find them.
Right.
The Verizon, the carriers cannot recover them. They can, but they've I don't know what the law is, but they do not.
Well, they can tell
that
that you're doing it. They can't.
That's correct. The content is not
content.
visible to them.
So, but you can still get arrested for driving while texting because they can prove that you were touching the phone while you're driving and get in an accident. You don't need the actual content of the message. It's not important.
Right. Or the NSA can get them and then distribute it to the New York Times. It doesn't really matter.
The NSA is a whole separate argument. That's
I'm using that as the CIA. Okay. Kennedy assassination.
But it's a separate argument that pollutes this kid argument. The kids are not thinking about NSA. The kids, though, are realizing that they're heading into this world where they are being studied contextually, and what they put into the system is changing their experience with the system. They are understanding that at a deep level. I gave a talk at a Maker Faire in New York talking about this stuff, and I said, the guy who makes my shirts is going to put an RFID blocking pocket in his shirt, and a kid in the front row stood up and says, I already have one. This kid was like 15 years old. And so he is already understanding how to hack his experience and keep data from his devices from going out to the outside world and how to control it. That is an interesting behavior that I didn't have to think about in high school.
So what I'm trying to tease out of this is some sort of larger theme that's going on here. And I think that this is not about the brand promise. I think the brand promise is pervasive. There are a number of services which refuse to support direct messages. There are some that do and are vacillating about it, such as Twitter. There are a number of brand promises that haven't really hit the marketplace with any kind of visceral reaction, except for Snapchat. Snapchat has dominated. I've watched it in action. I've got a almost 13-year-old and an almost 20-year-old, and they both use Snapchat identically, and that means that their circle of friends does. I think it's way underestimating what's going on here when people say that they should have sold it for $3.5 billion or whatever it was.
These
guys are
anybody
onto
says that
something.
is it just doesn't understand the world of audience building, and when you have an audience that's doubling every so often, it's very, very valuable. I remember same people said that about Zuckerberg when he bought Instagram, and I do agree with Mo there that Instagram is so important now. Imagine if Facebook didn't have that.
Well, imagine how awesome it would be for Instagram, because they'd be worth more than $3 billion.
They would be very, very, absolutely.
Keith, your audio is distorting. I don't know. Maybe you have a. Why don't you try the other mic?
Okay. Sounds like a mic cord is going bad or something.
Yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
Now, this is why I bought the wine I did. Sarah Francis is a new startup, and her wine is spectacular. Everybody around me says her wine's spectacular, but it's $150 a bottle, which is way over my price range. But in 3 years, it'll be $300 a bottle. And I can afford her wine today. I can't afford it when she really becomes known for being a great winemaker.
I changed the microphone.
Yeah,
that's better.
Instagram
was Zuckerberg's best purchase. And I said that the night he bought it. I said this is a brilliant purchase, and it's just proven out that it was a brilliant purchase because nobody cares about the $1 billion they spent on Instagram now. Back then it was a lot of money.
Well, it seems like the attempt to buy Snapchat was had a similar motive behind it, which was not to profit from it, but to cut off the competition from profiting.
But the problem
No,
is the problem is that they're going to have to keep doing it. It's like whack-a-mole because
I never bought into that. I do know that they wanted to keep it out of Apple and Twitter's hands, but there is so much data in Instagram that would fit right into what Facebook is going to do in the future that it's ridiculous. One picture, if you take one picture at let's say Squaw Valley, what does that tell the internet about you, who you are? And what your economic value is to the world, and all on and on. Every picture gets tagged now, and it has its own social graph. About just one picture, and I have 2,000 or 3,000 pictures in Instagram. You can figure out who I am at a pretty deep level by looking at my Instagram.
Go ahead, Keith.
But go back to the point about cloaking yourself. The guy with the RFID thing. It feels to me like what's happening here is there's a kind of a tug of war between the big winners from the last era who want to monetize the users on their platforms, and then secondly the users who just want to get stuff done and are not particularly into being targeted yet. You're an exception to that, I know, but for most people...
but here's what's going on with when you walk in with Google Glass or Google Now into an airport, and it tells you your plane tickets and your gate number and where your gate is and is it on time. All of a sudden, your life changes, and you start seeing that, oh, my life is getting better as I put more data into the systems. There is certain data that you don't want to put in the system. For instance, I live on a golf course, right? And one of the personal digital assistants like Google Now keeps telling me stuff about golf. I really don't care about golf. I hate golf. I just live on a golf course. And so you very quickly realize there's consequences to the data that you put in the system in this new world where the data that you put in the system causes other things to happen.
But don't you think that Snapchat is at least in part an attempt to escape from that by the people who use Snapchat and not want to play that game?
I with certain kinds of data, yes. And this is why I don't believe that Snapchat's going to take over the world. Kids know the kind of data that they want to put into Snapchat and needs this kind of impermanence. And there's other kinds of data that they know they need to put in their LinkedIn and put in their Facebook and put on their blogs if they have a blog, or put in Spotify for music, right? They're getting to be very adept at these social systems that are becoming contextual studiers of us. And they are trying to escape a little bit, but I don't think it's about escapism. I think it's about, hey, I have a certain kind of data here, and I'm going to do it here because it's impermanent, and it doesn't have the deep consequences of putting the same data in a Facebook where a picture can easily get reshared, and my parents can see it, and my other friends can see it, and they can react and cause drama about it. And when you spend time with a high school kid, they deal in that social world deeply, and they are not yet to the place where they need the contextual system to work for them.
No,
they don't yet need a job.
So I agree with that. If you look at the Just Me public stream, we've now
I can't hear anybody else.
Can you hear me? Steve, do you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I can hear you
Keith,
fine.
I can't hear you. I can't hear anybody.
All right, I'm going to call you back,
Steve,
Robert.
are we still on air?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on air. I don't.
I'll keep talking while he calls back.
Yeah, you answer, and I'll call Robert.
So I was going to make the point that what we've really done with Just Me in the last week is we've given the ability for a person to choose whether they're cloaked or uncloaked. If they do the confessions thing, they're anonymous, and by definition, cloaked, no one knows who they are, and they can say whatever they want, and it's anonymous. If they do a selfie, they're completely uncloaked. It's clear that it's them, and it's very obvious it's them. And there's a couple of other message types as well. And it's interesting to watch people flipping between those two. So I'm really agreeing with what Robert said, which is there's a level of sophistication in knowing the tools and what you want to use and when you want to use it and what for that is emerging. And the kind of tools like Facebook or even Twitter, which only have one paradigm, will be the losers in that. And what you end up getting to is this kind of, from the point of view of Facebook, it's a whack-a-mole situation, because there's going to be new tools arising all the time on massive scales just because of the distribution of smartphones, and they're going to have to either buy them or kill them.
Do you agree with this, Kevin?
Which piece?
The whack-a-mole. This is somehow going to be bad for Facebook and for Twitter. Just parenthetically, not for Twitter, but
no, mainly for Facebook. Twitter's playing a different game.
Right, Kevin?
Yeah. No, I think that's it. I think Twitter is playing a game of if you want to do stuff in public, we're here for you. Whereas Facebook has always tried to say that you're selectively showing certain people certain things, trust us, and Snapchat and it is making a sort of stronger trust guarantee there. And I think that's. I think what this is people negotiate the different degrees of what they're sharing with whom. And it used to be that you would post stuff in public because you didn't think anyone else would be interested in that. You just post it in public and assume only your friends would bother to read it. And that has because of continual media stories of famous people having their stuff exposed, people are now. The idea of I better not put that stuff up there is gaining traction, and I think that the Snowden revelations have also wakened that up as well. So we're now starting to go through a series of different iterations of how do we practically share with a subset of people and make sure that copies aren't kept, or that we understand what copies are kept. And I think that Snapchat is a marker for that because it says, okay, we're out on one end of this list. You can be sure this stuff has gone, unless they screenshot a photograph with another phone or something. But it's cumbersome enough that you won't have that. The thing that Snapchat does do is keep track of who you've spoken to, when, and where, and that stuff isn't volatile. That history is kept and displayed to you when you log in. So there's a marker there for how they may think about monetizing this in the future. But it's also a marker for the metadata debate that we're having over the Snowden revelations, because clearly who I sent a message to when is potentially just as incriminating as the message itself, and in some ways more open to interpretation about what were you saying to that person then and what's going on.
So, last night I watched an AC/DC concert, and they had tens of thousands of people all dancing at one time. And the lead singer for AC/DC is not even the guy who made him famous. They replaced the lead singer after he died, right? And in other words, where I was going with this is we need to look at what the business model is that each of these has. Google is an intent satisfaction company. So you put an intent in there and it shows you something, and there's a lot of ads there that have to do with your intent. If you're searching for DSLRs, you'll see camera ads, right? Facebook is about demographic advertising. So they can figure out, I'm Rackspace. I want to advertise to people. I want to advertise to CIOs who are, 20 to 30 years old, and on and on and on. And I can really get my ad in front of a very small but very profitable group of people. I don't know what the business model is that Snapchat's going to turn on. And they have to be really careful, because it's not about, if you put the wrong kind of ads in front of people, their audience will go really apeshit.
They should buy my patent, and what they should do is do direct messages from brands that you opt into with coupons, where the coupon disappears after 3 days if you don't use it.
Yeah, a new kind of Groupon.
So what I think I think this has been brought up before. What do you want to give them that idea for?
Because
so they can sell for $7 billion. I mean, come on.
I'll take just a small fraction of what they're turning down.
I think you're doing what they aren't, which is giving yourself away for too little.
I've always done my whole life. Ask my wife.
Well, get over it. Get over that idea of yourself. The thing that I think about this business model, this metadata question, what some people would call, what did you say it was? It was dangerous, Kevin? This metadata thing? I didn't understand your reference.
Well, so the point of metadata is that if Snapchat is erasing the content of the messages, but it's keeping the history of what you
I understood
who
that
you spoke
part,
to, when, and potentially where in their their chain of data there.
And that becomes
and that's the stuff that the back and forth surveillance debate is about as well. But it's sort of Robert's point about living on the golf course is that if they build up a database of who you speak to about what, then that is potential data they can use elsewhere to monetize things and to spread stuff out. But it's something that people aren't necessarily thinking about because they're thinking about the content of the message rather than the metadata of it.
Something that Robert said earlier, I think, vectors with this, which is what the stream starts to do and change as you interact with it is what the value is. It's not about advertising. It's about what the value of the service is. Once you have established that value, then you can start advertising and hanging, advertising off of that as an affinity buy. But initially, there has to be some ongoing, unique value. And I think Snapchat, certainly with a small group of our children, is enormously valuable. And will continue to be. I mean, I think that's the Twitter model. Twitter continues to be the canonical, delivery mechanism for news, for media conversation. I mean, what else is there? What do we spend? Just take a look at the amount of time we spend on a daily basis, and I don't mean just the tech crowd, just in general. Processing this kind of combination of media and political news, government, etc. That kind of information processing takes up an enormous part of our day.
So Francine said, this proves that big platforms can't just clone the tech of disruptive startups. We knew this back when I was at Microsoft. Somebody said, I was talking to some engineer there, and it's like, oh, we should buy Dig, because Dig was the hot thing. And they were like, oh, I could build Dig in a week. And I go, really? Yeah, go do it then, because it's not about the algorithms. It's not about the look. It's not about the technology, the compiler. It's about the audience. And the audience with the technology is what it creates a business. And we'll have to have, there's a lot of arrogance amongst programmers. Oh, I could build that in a week. No, you can't, because you can't get the audience. And most people have no idea how to get an audience or get people to use their things. By the way, it's funny, at the film festival the other week, I ran a panel with a bunch of famous TV people and film people, and they said it's not about the art anymore. That's sort of easy. It's easy to go and create a movie or a book or a film or a bottle of wine. It's about distribution, and can you get anybody to pay attention to it? And that's the new argument. And that's why I'm pretty sure that Snapchat's not going to take over the entire world of our behavior, because at some point people still want to get the distribution to other people, get them to hear our plea for help, or get them to hear about our favorite brands, or get them to hear about the stuff we're doing. And that's why Twitter and Facebook are so popular and are going to remain popular until something comes along that is even better at doing what they're doing.
Yeah, this, the way that I view it is this is shelf space. That's what the actual Bitcoin, pardon the expression, of these services is. There's only a limited amount of shelf space. It seems like there's an unlimited amount, but getting the attention of the majority of that audience toward a shelf position is the whole game. And as you see these things like Snapchat evolve, and when they start to take that metadata and then use that to feed back things that are more interesting and more valuable for their growing market share, they're going to take over even more shelf space. I'll give you an example. The Safeway, we shop at Safeway a fair amount, and they have their own individual brands. I forget what it's called. Whatever, I think is what the name is, according to our producer. And I find myself actually looking at that as a value proposition, and studies have shown that, in fact, that's true, that they are actually now they're more expensive than typical, name brands, and their market share is continuing to go up because people get accustomed to this kind of brand, and they'll look around. They think that, based on historical evaluation, that these store brands are less expensive, and they end up buying them, even when they're not less expensive. So I think that's what's going to happen with the, and also they take over more and more shelf space. You look on the shelves now, and you see the Safeway brand taking up maybe 50 to 70% in some areas. Cereal, for example. No, it's not true, but I'm making the point that it's growing. Well, those who pay attention to this stuff are not going to operate the way that the couch potato audience does. The easiest thing to do is to keep doing what you were doing, and that's responsible for a lot of marketing campaigns. And I think that's going to happen with Snapchat. I don't think it's going to happen with Google Plus, no matter how many applications and services they put Google Plus as the front end for. And what else is there?
So, well, there's the operating system, which is, iMessage and PhotoStream are becoming increasingly mature with comments and likes and sharing and public. And Hangouts is becoming increasingly sophisticated as well, plugging into images and such that you take on an Android phone. So part of me wonders whether the space for private and shared messaging is going to be owned by the OS, and the only space to play in is more like this public space, or features that the OS doesn't get to yet, but we'll get to later.
I don't see the OS as being anything but the notification system, and I think it's the similarities between the two major notification systems, which is the OS.
But what about
the rest of it is irrelevant?
No, iMessage is the standout. iMessage is absolutely massive. Not as big as WhatsApp yet, but I would say 2 years from now, iMessage is going to be bigger than WhatsApp.
Scully, you agree with that?
Yeah, unless the Apple ecosystem is going to be pretty safe for a long time. No matter what happens.
5 to 1
locked in for 2 years.
iMessage is problematic because, as Francine was saying in the chat, it is hard to talk to people who aren't using iOS with it because it ends up hiding messages from you, and that's a structural problem with it. And potentially there may be the same problem with Hangouts.
What do you mean
if
by that?
Ends up doing the same thing of preferring the private channel that you have to both be logged into the same system than the public channel.
I'm not sure.
The challenge with a lot of this stuff is making sure that you're sending the thing in the efficient way and in the backup way as well, but hiding the double messages from people and things. There's some subtle trickiness to this.
What is what are being hidden? As far as I know, if you send something in iMessage and it goes to a down level system such as Android.
SMS, yeah.
Yes, it goes through. You just don't get the delivered or the red indication, but it works just fine. What are you saying?
I'm saying if you move your phone from iOS to Android, then iOS will other people who were previously sending you iMessages on iOS, you won't see them because they're being sent to your Apple account, which you're not reading.
No, well, that's true if you maintain the account and change the phone. That's true.
I'm still at a loss to understand what the actual mechanism is when you say it's going to your Apple account. If I send a text to somebody, it goes over iMessage. If I send a text to somebody, it goes over iMessage to other iPhones. It goes over SMS to everybody else.
Kevin's talking
about
about a corner case. The corner case is, you had an iOS phone, you sent a bunch of iMessages. A lot of your recipients also have iPhones. Now suddenly you change to an Android. They keep sending you messages on iMessage. And if you still have the account in the cloud, the messages will go to iMessage, but they'll never get to your Android phone because they don't know you've got an Android phone.
Right, until you turn it off.
Yeah.
That happened to me.
that can happen. And Kevin's right that there is a limitation with iMessage, that it's only partially cross-platform in that regard. But don't you think Apple's going to fix that? I think there's a lot of indications that Apple will do with iMessage what they did with iTunes, which is just make it cross-platform.
It would be sensible if they did, but they don't have a strong incentive to do that. That's the problem, because they want the other platforms to feel flaky and the iOS ones to feel smooth, and so there's there's a not invented here issue to that, but there is also, the point is that they're trying to do a good thing, which is unify the user experience between these different messaging channels, and they've made something that works very well in their domain, and the difficulty comes when you try and cross that domain and you hit cases they haven't thought of, because their assumption is everyone has multiple Apple devices, and if you have an Apple device that you stop using, then that will, your iMessages will end up there and you won't see them. I may be getting iMessages I'm not seeing, because I don't have an iOS device I use daily anymore.
Because SMS is used with the cream of your social graph, you figure this out within a few hours.
Of course, yeah.
Because people are like, "Why aren't you writing back my messages anymore?" It's like, I didn't see your messages. Oh, that's right, I had iMessage.
Well,
so I have to go down to Apple.
I read what Francine says in the chat room. I hear what Kevin says. I hear what you say, Robert. I hear what Keith says about this. I still don't understand. I think that the operative statement is what Robert says, which is that at some point you figure it out and you turn off something, right?
The iChat, you go to your Apple Cloud account and you turn it off, and switch it back to SMS only. Don't send and receive.
Can you do that?
Through
you
iChat.
can, yeah, you can do that. But I think that all we're really saying is that it's a relatively immature phase of this whole thing. But I also think we're saying a second thing. If you look at where iMessage is today compared to a year ago or 2 years ago when it just began, it's now billions of messages a week, billions. And that tells you that the operating system on mobile is sucking up some of the space for messaging. And I bet you anything Google's seen the same thing since they integrated SMS into Hangouts, that it's more and more messaging is going through that. And as that happens, my point is, for someone like me and other developers who are thinking about messaging and Snapchat-like features, the space you can play in and be pretty sure that the OS isn't going to play there is the public space.
Yeah, no, I understood your point. I just don't think that disruptively what is actually happening is how you describe it. I think what's happening is that the services are improving to the point where they will be normalized between each other. That's when the standards will emerge. Mm-hmm. When there are enough. I mean, right now I don't see this as a problem. When Francine says that her daughter doesn't get the message on the
correct device,
on the Android device, my answer would be, why are you using an Android device? So I think this will sort itself out rather rapidly.
The iOS one isn't crap, That's the
well, but developers are making 5 times the money on iOS, so they're going to continue to go where the money is. Yeah, you stopped. Muted yourself, Kevin.
I unmuted myself. Not anymore. They're not making money. That much
this
more money.
This is a story I read
the
this
amount
morning
of money people
about
making
30
from iOS
seconds
things is
ago.
going down quite a lot because of the rise of free apps and the move to in-app payment stuff. It is actually, there is, but the sort of the huge bonanza of making money out of iOS apps has shrunk quite a lot.
There's a story today that says the developers are making 5 times the money on
per install. It says.
Uh-huh.
That's a way of normalizing, saying, oh, let's normalize away the fact that there are more Androids than iOS.
Okay, you guys continue, and I'll go get this article, because that's not what it said.
I was just looking for it, but I can't see it. It's kind of disappeared from TechMeme. It was there earlier.
I'll find it. It's on my wall on Facebook. I shared it yesterday.
It's on my reading list. Copyright. Apple. A moment of silence.
So I do think that the whack-a-mole phenomenon is real, however. If you are Dan Rose at Facebook, who's their head of M&A, By the way, if you haven't read it, you've got to go and read Hatching Twitter, the book Hatching Twitter. It's fascinating. And it's a great discussion, by the way, about the difference between Jack and Evan when it comes to what is the meaning of a status message. Is it what's going on, or is it what am I doing? And the book postulates that the reasons Twitter was successful is because it does both. And that if either one of them had done it on their own, it wouldn't have been successful.
Right. The reason it's successful is they're both wrong.
And they're both right.
No, they're not right. No, I have always resented the notion that a service can decide what it is that I'm doing. And the history of Twitter proves this to be completely incorrect.
In that, I agree with you.
Users figured out what Twitter was, and they made it what they wanted it to be. And nothing
users have already made me look stupid with just me, I can tell you, because it's not doing anything like what I thought it was going to be doing. But
why? What did you think it was going to do, and what has it done?
I thought it was going to replace person-to-group, person-to multi-person messaging for shared messages and take a lot of it away from email and away from SMS. And in fact, it didn't do either of those two. It was all this public stuff that took off. I mean, nothing took off in the tens of millions, but insofar as there's traction, is in the public stuff. And it's, millions of messages a month, and it's all public. Very different to what I thought. It's kind of like Twitter, but with more distinguished message types. It's got selfies. It's kind of calling out some very specific message types that Twitter doesn't do. But other than that, it's actually quite like Twitter in that it's very public. We've got followers, we've got following, comment. We've got private chat on top of that, which Twitter doesn't have. You can't go and start a chat with someone who tweets. You can start a chat with somebody who does a Just Me post. So it's kind of almost like microblogging for mobile. And that isn't closer to Tumblr, maybe in that regard. Totally different to what I thought it was going to be.
All right, well, we're starting to run out of time here. So anybody else have any other things that they would like to talk about?
Well, we didn't talk about 23andMe and the FDA coming down and trying to keep them from taking over the healthcare industry.
But I mean, have they really started trying to do this? Hasn't this been a problem all along? They've been trying to get certification.
Or for 23andMe?
23andMe have basically been, even though we all would probably want to go on their side of this debate, they've clearly mismanaged the whole thing because they've been in a dialogue with the FDA forever and haven't delivered what they promised, and are now having to apologize and crawl out from under the impending doom that implies. So I think there's some element of just mismanagement there. It doesn't strike me the FDA really wants to stop them doing what they're doing. It just wants them to comply with what the FDA needs them to do in order to keep doing it. And so far, the FDA looks like they've been relatively good guys, saying, okay, keep going, but we need this paperwork. And 23andMe have been saying, okay, well, we'll give you the paperwork, but actually never did.
Robert?
I'm just showing you my 23andMe kit that I got a year ago and I never sent in. But
so you are not
in a way, 23andMe can create a new kind of healthcare system, and the FDA really doesn't want that to happen because if it does, they don't have control. And
I think.
What's the reason for control?
To keep people from getting hurt ostensibly, but also to protect the industry itself. And that was one of the arguments that came out this week was people are asking for healthcare that might not be needed or might not be needed according to the healthcare system. And they're putting costs on the healthcare system. And that was one of the reasons the FDA came down so hard on them.
So you don't think that they have a point?
They do have a point.
Okay.
But what we're seeing is systems are being disrupted by these new upstarts and they're starting to get resistance to them. Uber is the same way. Uber is banned in Vancouver, for instance. Why? Because the old school taxi industry resists this kind of change because they know there's union jobs at risk, among other things. And there are legitimate concerns about who is who's at fault here if something goes wrong.
Yeah,
This is the 23andMe thing is weird because it's like, who is doing these unnecessary surgeries? It's not 23andMe, it's the doctors. So
Right.
if doctors are performing unnecessary surgeries, that is a malpractice issue for them. It's not an issue for 23andMe.
Yeah, the FDA doesn't see it that way.
But I know, but
I
that's,
see
that's
it
the
that
point. It's
way,
like,
and
okay,
I am-
hang on a minute. You regulate drugs and doctors and medical advice. The medical advice here is have this surgery, which has been given to them by a doctor who has been certified by the FDA. 23andMe and saying, we just found this gene that isn't so if someone's being unscrupulous here, it's the doctor, not 23andMe.
Yeah, I think this goes to what the FDA is all about, which is we are going to regulate the healthcare industry, and you either comply or you get shut down. And Francine just made that point. Totally true.
But there's also something totally civilized about that. I mean, look at parts of Africa where they test drugs on people without there being any state oversight.
Yeah.
The state should represent our collective interest in preventing renegade drug people from being able to do shit that's going to hurt us.
Absolutely true. But there are conflicting needs here, and we are holding back some innovation because of the regulatory concerns. How much regulation do we need? That's a deep question that is way over my pay grade. But I do see startups being very frustrated with the FDA and the ability to change, to get new ideas into the marketplace, whether they're coming from the pharmaceutical world, because a friend of mine works in the pharmaceutical world, and it's really hard to get a drug approved here, which means the drug costs a lot more than it might otherwise cost, even after they prove it works. You know, the person I'm thinking of, their drug is already approved in Europe and can't be used here yet. And why is that? You know?
Yeah, no, there clearly are. You know, if you look at the process whereby drugs get approved, it's pretty onerous to get a drug approved, and it should be. You know, it should be pretty onerous. But the onerousness is all about scientists, your peers, confirming your findings. It's not like some bureaucrat. There are clear steps you have to take, and it's about various science publications, publishing the results and confirming the findings independently of your research, repeating your research if you like. So there can't be accidents.
But we know of places where the FDA protects the business interests of the existing healthcare industry, right?
But they do both. They do both. I don't disagree with you, but they do both. They also prevent the drug industry from releasing stuff to market that hasn't been proven yet. So they're doing both things at the same time.
I agree. I'm just covering both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't think we've figured anything out here, but
no, I don't think this is one that's going to be. You either comply or you.
The only thing that I see in the chat room is a discussion about that the FDA is upset with Angelina Jolie. I think that she performed an incredible service by publicizing something which was obviously a very difficult decision for her, and turned it into something that other women could make a calculation for themselves. I mean, these are incredibly difficult life and death decisions, and I don't think that the government should be putting any impediments in people having the ability to make that decision. Mm-hmm. So how this works out in terms of one particular company is not as important as shining a light on the process so that things can develop. I mean, there are a number of programs underway to allow early use of yet uncertified or approved drugs, and they've had some tremendous success. And these doctors are fighting a difficult battle between preserving their process in order to be able to do something that's for the greater good and giving people a chance to live. So it's not about the company.
I think there's some interesting battlefronts there, like take HIPAA, which is the HIPAA is all about patient records. And most of the doctors I know, I have a bunch of doctor friends who are at Stanford Hospital, whose kids play soccer with my kids, and we talk about this at the games a lot. And they make the point that it's almost impossible for them to do their job properly because of the rules around HIPAA. And what they'd love to see is that patient records are owned by patients, and then the patients just sign off on sharing them with whoever needs to see them. And that way there'd only be one authority, the patient. The way it is now, there's multiple doctors, each of which have partial records that don't share them with each other, and it's actually hard to share them with each other because they've got to get multiple approvals to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go around the table, and starting with Kevin Marks.
Going over, hang on. So I think what the 23andMe draws to a larger thing, which is reproducibility of scientific results, and also changing patterns of measurability of things. And that is a big trend that's happening, which is that it used to be that making measurements was hard and expensive, and you accepted a small number with lots of stats on them. And now making measurements is easy and continuous, and something that we can all do every day, whether we're wearing little bracelets that make imperfect measurements of how many steps we take. It's still better than us guessing it and reporting it to a doctor. And similarly with blood pressure readings, all kinds of other sensor stuff. I know Robert's already written a book about this, but the disruption that this is happening to medicine is enormous, because the presumption of what is a measurement and what isn't is changing, and that's going to have long run implications. And I think that this 23andMe thing is a marker for that. It's a marker for people taking their health decisions in different directions. And we've always had lots of bad advice about the internet is full of it. The tabloids are full of it. The supposed health shops are full of bad advice as well. So saying, "Oh, we want to ban this one company from doing it," is kind of odd.
Robert?
I don't know. I'm still stuffed from Thanksgiving, so it's hard to think about anything other than going back and taking a nap.
Well, you did pretty well for tryptophan poisoning.
Yeah, among other poisoning.
Oh, I see. Well, that's a longer term problem.
You missed a pretty epic wine tasting up in Napa. We'll get the videos up because we went in and interviewed a startup up there.
That's the closest I'm going to get to it, is watching a video. I'll tell you right now.
It was pretty epic.
Keith?
I also was, every year I get invited for Thanksgiving as the kind of token foreigner who's landed on these shores, and I'm the one that gets to give thanks for the Americans feeding me, which I did yesterday and ate a massive amount. And now I need 23andMe to tell me if I've done any damage.
You're just lucky that we're letting you in the country at all.
That is true.
Okay, go on.
I'm very lucky.
But that's not your wrap-up and summary.
My wrap-up is I am totally intrigued by the relationship between human beings and other human beings as expressed through these apps like Snapchat, Instagram, Vine, Whisper, and the like. And I'm pretty sure something very significant and different is happening than what happened when Facebook grew up. But I haven't figured it out yet, so we'll watch this space.
Well said. All right. I want to thank Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legess, without which we wouldn't be doing this. I want to thank, in the same context, I can't tell you how exciting it is that New Tech has provided us with some of their amazing technology. And the more I read about it, the more I can't do anything else. So I'm about page 140, and the manual is 530. So you can figure out where we are in this process. And we're also ordering some new cameras and other stuff to go along with it. So it'll be happening over the next few weeks that we will make this transition. But it's going to definitely give us the ability to maintain what we're doing here, which is hopefully a unique combination of insight and ignorance. I want to thank Kevin Marks. I want to thank Robert Scoble.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Anybody want some turkey? Come on over.
I want to thank Keith Tier.
Thank you.
Next week, I'm not sure we're going to do a show, but we're hopefully going to do one. I think I'm in Vegas all week, so it'll probably be on Friday. Is everybody available? Just nod if you are.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
I'm in the
Probably not,
UK.
actually.
All right, well, we'll have to negotiate that.
right.
I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. Where's the hand? There it is. And I want to thank the chat room, as always. You guys are incredible. And we're going to hopefully make that better as well. Yes. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Black Friday. I still don't know what that means. Happy Hanukkah.
Go spend money. Help the economy.
We'll have to do this
have some
Hanukkah Thanksgiving thing the next, I think it happens again in 76,000 years. So we'll meet you back here at that point. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks.